Welcome into our Dynasty review for the Tennessee Titans. Actually, a pretty interesting team, I think, when talking about Dynasty for the players that are no longer going to be there, for the players that are going to be there. Brian, always ask you, when you think of the Titans, 6-11, 2023, what do you think of when you think of the Titans?
I just feel like they're starting over again. Like these last 2 years, their fantasy relevant players never became relevant. As far as skill positional players, and we'll get into those guys. But I think it'll be an interesting landing spot for if a high end offensive piece goes there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's definitely some moves that are going to be made, and we're going to get into it now. Just kind of reviewing the 2023 season, looking ahead, and just for the dynasty prospects. Of course, super flex is always kind of the way we approach things. I have in our show notes that the head coach is unknown, but I believe, I don't think it's official, but it sounds like they're going to be hiring the offensive coordinator from the Cincinnati Bengals, Brian Callahan. So that's kind of interesting. We'll get into that a little bit later on. That could be interesting in terms of potential players that go there. Cap space, they actually have the second most cap space in the NFL at over 77 million, 77.5 million. So that's the second most out of any team. They have a lot of money to spend. They have some, good draft picks. They have obviously the 7th overall pick. They have their second round pick. So two very high picks, 2 top 40 picks, which is good to see. In terms of free agents, it's kind of the change in the guard. They brought in Ryan Tannehill, and it was Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry, and they had their run. They were the number 1 seed in the AFC there a couple years ago and made the playoffs and made some noise. But yeah, definitely coming to an end. Tannehill's a free agent. Derrick Henry's a free agent. That's really it. I mean, Nick Westbrook-Akine, if you want to consider that a piece, is a free agent. So yeah, we'll jump into the quarterbacks. We'll talk about all three. Will Levis, I assume, is going to get a shot. And I thought he flashed. He had some flashes. He looked more competent at times than Bryce Young did kind of all year. So I don't know. How you feeling about Will Levis? There's value to a quarterback that's going to at least get a shot for a majority of the season.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think, Ryan Tannehill is definitely not the future for this team. They have to figure it out. I'd be kind of interested to see if they draft a quarterback. They've drafted one each of the last 2 years. And obviously Will Levis was like a high draft prospect in general who fell to day 2, but he went really early, I remember, in round 2. So it was kind of like, all right, someone wants him, someone will give him a shot. So yeah, I think I agree with you. Like, he did show some prowess, especially in that, obviously his first start, the Atlanta game.
Yeah.
4 touchdowns will make anyone look good, but I think a full off season and everything with this team, and hopefully they can get something going.
Yeah. And this team was bad. Like this, they had Derrick Henry, you had DeAndre Hopkins there, but like offensive line sucked. No one outside of Hopkins in the receiving room was very good. And even Hopkins was kind of, inconsistent. So it was tough. But Levis is interesting. He can move. He's definitely like a gamer, for sure. I think it's interesting if they do bring in this Bengals offensive coordinator. Jake Browning is a free agent. And do they kind of bring in Jake Browning? Like, is that something they do? You mentioned it. Do they draft a quarterback? They're at the 7th spot. You assume the first 3 picks are going to be quarterbacks. Then you got the Cardinals and Chargers, who aren't going to go quarterback, Giants, and then Tennessee. So theoretically, the 4th best quarterback could be could rise up the ranks, and maybe he's taken by Tennessee, or maybe they just take the best offensive lineman available. Yeah, it's really interesting. But hopefully Levis gets a shot, because I thought even scouting him last year, he had some skills. Like it's like, okay, I can see something here. And again, we saw it. Kind of play out a couple times this year. Tannehill. Any interest, like, someone in our Dynasty League dropped him, and I just spent the rest of our fab at the end of the year, kind of fab was going to reset, spent it all, picked him up. I think he could maybe go somewhere and maybe be like a bridge quarterback. What do you think about Tannehill at this point in his career, who's, I don't even know how old he is. He has to be like 35 years old, though, or getting up there.
Yeah, he is. You nailed it. He is 35 as of right now. I don't know when his birthday is, though. But yeah, like, I mean, I could see him going somewhere. I'm not banking on it, but like you said, like if he's on your waiver wire right now and you have access to it, you might as well just pick him up. And he's pretty easily droppable before the year starts, if nothing develops. But I mean, at worst, he'll be a backup somewhere, I would assume. But yeah, I don't think we've seen the last of Tannehill.
Yeah, especially just last 2 years, we've seen, everyone talks about the injuries, and obviously in 2023, there was actually more quarterbacks that made a start in 2022. So it's been 2 years in a row where we've seen just so many quarterbacks missing games. Yeah, I mean, we talked about it, I think, in another video, but just going down the list of you just look at the teams that need quarterbacks. Obviously, the top three teams in the draft potentially need one. But then, you just keep going. The Giants, Titans, Falcons, not the Jets, but Minnesota, if they don't bring back Cousins, Denver potentially, Las Vegas Raiders. It's kind of, Pittsburgh. So there's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks. I don't think they're all going to be able to fill. So yeah, he could be an interesting bridge. Definitely a hold at this point. And then Malik Willis, I also think, is a hold. Rushing ability, he could go in as the backup to Will Levis, and Will Levis could just not be very good, and Malik Willis gets a shot. So you kind of agree there with Malik Willis, kind of a hold at this point?
Yeah, you can't get anything for him similar to Tannehill. Like, I don't think you can get anything for him, really, honestly. Like, maybe you can get a third from somebody who's willing to take the shot, but I wouldn't necessarily be trading my third to get Tannehill unless something came up, but at that point he's probably a little more expensive than a third, but so who knows. But yeah, I agree. Hold Willis. I'd rather have Willis than Tannehill, just because the age difference and stuff, and the unknown, even though we've seen him play a little bit and he has not been very good. But yeah, so I guess that's pretty much it. Like the number 2 and 3s basically behind Levis are just solid holds, and I think Levis, like I think he is interesting if you could buy him for your second round pick this year, just as like a what if kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, they could just kind of head into full rebuild. And again, we're going to get potentially the best offensive tackle in the entire draft at number 7, and just like, all right, we got a foundational piece. We'll go from there, and then just roll with Levis. So, but yeah, I do find that interesting with the Jake Browning free agent. Do they bring him in to maybe compete with Levis? That could be something with the Bengals offensive coordinator, seemingly their head coach. The running backs, big name here. Derrick Henry's been one of the best running backs over the last 5 years or so. He's a free agent. So we'll start with him, obviously. I'm just going to list some team names, and you tell me if you think that would be like a good spot for Henry, and would it potentially boost his value at where he's valued now, what is he valued as? Oh man, he's way down there. RB 34. So I understand he's 30 years old. So Baltimore, does that increase his value if he goes to Baltimore this offseason?
Yeah, probably. Like, Are you saying increase it as opposed to staying on the Titans?
Just as opposed to, I think we assume he's off the Titans. Just like,
Right.
does he move up to like RB 25? Does he get like a 10 spot boost or something? I don't know about that high, but does he get a boost in value? Or are you excited about him? Heading into the year as a Baltimore Raven.
Okay. I got you. So no, it doesn't excite me, but I think it's fine. I think it's basically a lateral move to where he's at right now. Like you'll have a very similar role. He's getting goal line carries over Gus Edwards if he goes to Baltimore. So he's not going to catch the ball, but that was never a big part of his game anyways.
Yeah. Cowboys with Pollard?
Yeah, that could be interesting because I guess what you really got to think about is he better than Ezekiel Elliott was last year? In 2022.
Yeah.
We got to remember to say that.
Yeah.
Because I think he could be easily. Like, I mean, a lot of people are kind of down on Henry, which is kind of funny. It's like he was still RB8, like it didn't. I don't know if it necessarily felt that way through parts of the year, but I think he was still pretty solid. Yeah, people are afraid of the age, but I wouldn't necessarily buy him right now. But yeah, I could like the Cowboys. I could totally see it. And Pollard goes back to the role he had when Zeke was there.
Yeah, it's funny because I thought that he was actually pretty consistent this year. Like if you look at his game log in half PPR, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, I guess 5 games where and they were bad busts. They were like under 5 points. So I guess that kind of sticks with you.
And honestly, looking at his game log, like I'm actually kind of surprised, like how good he really was. Like because he was very consistent. He just did Derrick Henry stuff. I think there was a lot of hype around Tajay Spears. I know we'll get to next.
Yeah. What if he finds himself on the Chargers and he's basically like the only guy you're really excited about there? No Eckler, and they really don't have much else. What if he finds himself on the Chargers? You like that?
Yeah, that's kind of a tough one. Because I wonder if they would throw him the ball more. Like, obviously, they wouldn't throw it to him like Eckler levels, but he's been shown to like be like a pretty decent pass catcher. Like they just don't. The Titans didn't just use him that way. And maybe that does say something about how good he was as a pass catcher. But I mean, he has a pretty good catch percentage in general over his career, just not a lot of targets. So I think I'd like that better than either the Ravens or the Cowboys.
Yeah. So let's say you kind of are on like a rebuilding team, like you went for the championship and either you won or you just came short, and you're kind of like, well, my team's super old now, and that was my last run. If someone offers you a late 2024 second, are you just taking that for Henry and getting out of it?
I guess like. I feel like if you made it to the championship, or you like maybe if you just missed the playoffs, I think is like a more realistic thing. But then again, you probably would have tried to sell him during the season because he would have held more value then. Yeah, I feel like my team, I'd have to be like sure about my team's future as far as like, am I really ready to sell it off? Which if I was, I guess I would take that. I would try and get a slightly higher second if possible, but yeah, I guess I would, but I wouldn't be, I feel like you could probably just hold them and get a little bit more during the season for him too, than a second. I don't know if you're going to ever quite get a first for him again, which is actually kind of unfair. It's just unfair because he's worth a first if you look at the numbers on paper. Like what you just did, it's like that's totally worth a first round pick, and it's like, I don't think you ever will.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only situation is like it's November and he's doing it again. He's a top 12 running back, and then maybe you can get a first for him then. But it feels like one of those where if I'm competing, I'm just going to hold him. If I'm rebuilding, maybe I wait and see where he goes, and maybe he gets that bump. in value. So, but yeah, I think I would take a late 24 second for him if I am rebuilding. So, Tajay Spears is the next one. A lot of hype around him, like you said. Third or fourth, sorry. Choking.
What? Oh, what?
No, I was like choking. Third or fourth round pick. I think it was a third round pick. He outsnapped Henry like a lot this year, and he had some games. He was maybe flex worthy in like PPR, but that was pretty desperation stuff. I was more excited about him when Mike Vrabel was the coach. Now that he's out, I'm a little less excited, although the GM is still there, the one that drafted him. I don't know. I guess my question for Tajay Spears is, what would you sell him for, trying to capitalize on the idea he's going to be the number one running back? And then vice versa, like what would you try and buy him for to kind of buy low on him if someone doesn't value him as maybe the starting running back for the Titans? So we could start with like what would you sell him for if you're trying to kind of capitalize potentially on value?
Yeah, it's tough because like what I would actually want to buy him for, which I would hope to like get more if I was selling. So obviously that's always the case, right? But I guess like I would buy him for a mid second right now, or even an early second. Like I'd be fine paying that, but I don't think I'm trading him away from that. Like, because you got to find someone who's a little more excited about him, I guess, is what I would suggest. So I don't know. If it was like, if it was like 201, I'd consider it. But even that's kind of like, like it's supposed to be a really good draft class. I haven't, like I said, like in previous videos, I haven't quite looked at the rookie class super like close yet. So I'm not exactly sure what's there at 201, but that's kind of my gut. Like, I feel like, was he getting drafted basically in third rounds of rookie drafts last year?
Yeah, maybe second.
The second. Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember either. I just looked at it. He is like RB14 on a keep trade cut, which is to me is like, wow, I think I want to sell him. For that. Like any first I'll take. Like it doesn't matter what year, in my opinion. Like if it's a 2025, 2026 first, I'll take that. Don't think anyone's going to give you a 2024 first. I'll take maybe within the first few picks of the second round. You're talking about, we don't really know for sure how this, obviously it's too early to know what the rookie draft's going to be like. And I remember last year we were super hyped, and then the draft happened and it was like, man, it kind of like killed the draft a little bit, like the second round of the draft especially. But I will say this, there's potentially 6 quarterbacks that are going to be taken in the first round. I think almost assuredly 6 quarterbacks going in like the top 40 picks of the NFL draft. So that means a lot of good players. Either you're going to get a lot of like good running backs or wide receivers falling to you in the early second, or you're going to get a quarterback, in the early second.
So I just pulled up because I keep a log of our drafts. Dad took them, I'm pretty sure, at 19 overall in our draft. So in 12 teams, obviously that's the middle of the second round. So yeah, I guess so to answer the question, I guess more completely, because you were saying like, are you capitalizing on it? It's like, I don't know if you really are, if that's where you drafted him necessarily, like you said, any first. Interesting, you're like the 25 first.
Just think about what you can do with first in season, like if you're going for the championship, right? Like it's like, all right, I'm going to sell my first to get Derrick Henry, who's a top 7 running back or something like that next October or something like that, or November.
It's true. So
I'm just worried that if Vrabel was here, I'd feel a lot better. I just don't know. Again, his value right now is basically because we all assume he's going to be RB1. And I think there's a really decent, and maybe a 50-50 shot he's not the RB1 for the Titans. And they bring in Joe Mixon, or something, right? The Bengals offensive coordinator is their head coach. Joe Mixon, Bengals could potentially save some money if they cut Joe Mixon and then the Bengals bring him in, like or the Titans bring him in, So I don't know. When I see stuff like that, like Jalen Warren's another one where I think at one point he was rated as like RB20 like a week ago or so. Maybe a little lower, and it's just like that's basically only because we think he's gonna expand his role. Like there's nothing else to it, right? Like Tajay Spears to be RB14 is strictly almost completely based on the fact we think he's going to be the guy, and he could be. He definitely could be.
Yeah, and I think he another way to think about it also is if you can get RB14 prices, what do you think you would have to do to like totally obliterate that ranking? Because this might be the most he's ever worth,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, doesn't he have like no tendons or something too, or no knees or something?
Yeah, like he's like blown out both his ACOs or something. So he could, like Todd Gurley was like that, and Gurley had like an amazing 4 years, and he was just gone, right? Like just like okay, he was a stud and then gone. Yeah, I don't know. It's again seeing RB14 in combination with a new head coach makes me a little worried. Like think of Dameon Pierce, right? Like new head coach came in and Dameon Pierce was nothing. James Robinson is another example. New head coach comes in, James Robinson's nothing, right? Both those guys had good rookie years, and sometimes it just doesn't fit their system. Like and running backs are the most kind of system dependent players, I think. So I think I'd try and capitalize, but yeah, I think maybe outside anywhere from like a mid to late second, I think I just hold Spears at this point and see what happens.
So would you? All right, let's say the best deal you can get is a second, like that mid second, plus they want to throw in a third round pick, which is also like a mid round pick. Are you just taking that?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Probably. Yeah. Yeah, I think I would. So, it just feels like one of those we look at it in May and Tajay Spears is like RB28 or something because they draft someone or they brought in Mixon or something or a free agent. So
yeah. Man, you're gonna look like a genius if they actually bring in Mixon like specifically.
Yeah, I'm just doing so many times like coaches when they bring in the players that fit their system defensively, offensively. So, like Trenton Irwin I think he's a free agent. He's going to be a tight end, I bet you. Like, I think he's a free agent. The wide receiver for the Bengals. He's like their wide receiver for. I wouldn't be surprised if like he's a tight end. So, and it's not even official yet. But the Bengals is the head coach. So I always forget his name. Brian. I know I said it earlier. Brian something. But anyways, that's good talks there. Again, a lot of interesting pieces here with the quarterbacks and running backs. Wide receivers, I mean, they have Hopkins and they have an out. I think they get out of it, to be honest. I think Hopkins probably wants to get out of it too. He's one of those, like, if I'm contending, I'm going to keep him. If for some reason I'm rebuilding and I have him, just hold on to him because he could go to like the Chiefs or something, like everyone's favorite landing spot for a receiver. Like he could go to another team and you get excited about it. So that's kind of where I'm at with.
You should go to the Cowboys. Go to the Cowboys.
Yeah, I don't hate that.
Yeah.
I think that's good for everyone. Kind of like doesn't really hurt CD. It's good for Hopkins, good for Dak. So, but do you kind of feel the same way with Hopkins in those two scenarios? If you're contending versus rebuilding.
Yeah, he's a tough one because I do agree with that. Like, again, just like Derrick Henry, it's like Hopkins was still, 75% of himself basically this year. which is still pretty good because the dude was elite like for years. It's been injuries the past couple of years, but he played all 17 games this year. Still demanded a high target share. Is there a good way to look up total pass attempts across all the quarterbacks? I just don't know how to do it like easily. Like, well, I guess I would just have
for the Titans.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious because he had 137 targets, still broke 1,000 yards. He's still got his touchdowns and everything this year, so I think he's definitely a solid hold.
So they had 494 pass attempts as a team. What'd you say he had?
137.
137, basically 500. So yeah, you're looking at over 27%, 28% target share. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously he's still commanding a high target share. Like he was basically the team, him and Derrick Henry. But yeah, like I don't like. I'm looking at him on Keep Trade Cut, and he's wide receiver 57, which is just crazy to me.
I just saw that too. Yeah.
Like really? Like.
So what is that in terms of? Let's see if they show like a pick value. I mean, they're valuing him as like Khalil Shakir and stuff. Like, I'll take Hopkins over Khalil Shakir any day of the week.
Wandale. I'm just looking at the little page above him. It's just kind of like, I think you're not going to get what he's actually worth. Like, he might just be like one of those dudes you just have to keep like forever.
Yeah.
If he still is on your team, I agree. You might as well just hold him, even if you're rebuilding, because I think his situation can only get better from wide receiver. What was it? 56?
57.
57.
Yeah, I mean, 32. So basically, pick-wise, the 212 versus Hopkins, they favor the 212. The 301, they favor Hopkins. So basically, a third. You can throw your third-round pick and potentially get Hopkins. I would do that, no problem.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would do that even if I wasn't contending. Just get him and then try and trade him in season for a second. But then again, I guess that might not be that much of an upgrade now that I think about it, because you're trading him to like a contending team versus your high third. I don't know.
Yeah. Treylon Burks is the only other one to talk about, and it's not looking good for him. Like historically, and it's just the running joke is just like he's always injured, right? Like the sleeper updates of like you mentioned it. What was it? One day it was like he was healthy and then injured within like a span of 10 minutes or something.
Yeah, and then he was healthy again, and then he got injured again too. So there was obviously like some conflicting reports going on, unless he really does get injured that much, which would be terrible. But he was just he was always on and off the report, literally multiple times in a day, like we said. So you're right. Like, I don't know if it's ever going to really happen for him. Definitely not banking on it, but I feel like it's just sunk cost fallacy at this point. Like, you probably drafted him in the first round last year, or sorry, 2021, right?
Yeah, 2021.
Okay. Oh wait, no, 20. Sorry, I'm looking at the date. Yeah, it's 22. I was looking at the date because it's the 23rd of January, so I was thinking that was the year. I don't know why. I can't read dates now. But yeah. So yeah, it was 22.
Definitely a first round pick.
Yeah. So I feel like you might as well just hold him. If you could get any kind of second for him, like, just do it, I guess. But I don't know if you're getting that done. Maybe someone still believes in him.
He's ranked lower than Hopkins. So
yeah.
True. I mean, would you throw a third at him and just hope he hits? Like, doesn't matter. Let's just say it's the 305 this year. Would you just throw it at? Like, I don't know. Would you just take a chance on someone in the draft and hopefully you hit on a Tank Dell or a Puka Nacua, or do you just like, let me try and get Treylon Burks?
Yeah, I don't know. I might do that. Like, I might just trade a third away for him, just to see. But I don't know. Definitely nothing higher than that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's historically, I mean, it's kind of the same boat for like Quentin Johnston. He's even in a worse situation after the rookie year because at least Treylon Burks is like, all right, he missed 4 games. He flashed. He had a 100-yard, 7-catch game. Treylon Burks did, and then another. Yeah, back to back pretty good games. But yeah, just historically, receivers that don't reach 500 yards each of their first 2 years in any one season, it's just not good. I think like Devontae Adams is like the only notable player to do that. So
Nico
yeah,
Collins,
no one else.
Nico Collins.
Oh yeah, Nico, right? Did he hit? He didn't hit 500, right?
No, he was just under.
Just under. Oh, he had 480 in 12 in 10 games, and 450 in 14. So at least his yards per game were there. But yeah, I guess Treylon had what 4 something in 11 in 2022. So yeah.
So you're saying there's a chance?
Yeah, always. There definitely is. I mean, he was drafted in the first round for a reason. So, yeah, that's kind of it for the receivers. Maybe they bring in T. Higgins. I'll just throw out every Bengals player that's a free agent coming to the Titans, but I think the Bengals keep T. Higgins. But we'll talk about that. Chigakonkwo, like, it's fine. Like, again, he's in that range of tight ends from like tight end 9 to like 20, probably, where there's like not a whole lot of difference in my opinion. Like, if I were to tell you next year that Chigakonkwo outscored Jake Ferguson, is it likely? No, but would you be like, what? Like, completely shocked if I told you like, oh yeah, Chigakonkwo had 10 more points than Jake Ferguson and averaged 0.3 more points per game? Would you be that shocked?
I would be shocked, but not that shocked, I guess. Like,
I mean, but it's not like unbelievable. What are you talking about? Like what's more likely? Jake Ferguson is a top 3 tight end, or Chigakonkwo outscores Jake Ferguson?
No, yeah, Chig outscoring him, but yeah, I don't think that's what anyone's saying about Ferguson necessarily. And if they are, sell him to them.
Well, my point is like Ferguson's tight end 9 and Chigakonkwo is tight end 21. So I'm just saying, like, if someone wanted Jake Ferguson and gave me like a high 2nd round pick or even a random 2nd round pick and Chigakonkwo, I'll just take it because I don't really think there's going to be a huge separation, and any of these guys, in my opinion, listed from like 9 to 20, 21, whatever. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if any of them finished over the other, like, so I guess that's my point with tight ends in general. Like, and we kind of know this, like, it's really like the top 4 or 5 every year making the difference. So
yeah,
I don't know, like Chigakonkwo could be the number 2 target pretty easily, like, for this team that's potentially rebuilding. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if he was their number 2 targeted. He might have been that this year, but I don't know. That's just kind of what I was getting at there.
Yeah. Yes, 77 targets this year. So that's like 18% target share. You said almost 500, right? Something like that.
Yeah, 490 something. Yeah, so he probably was their number 2. I mean, the only other guy would be with Westbrook-Akine, and he had 45 targets. So, yeah. I don't know. I like Chig. He's an athletic tight end. Like, look at Njoku this year 7 breakout. Like, I kind of feel the same way with like Noah Fant, super athletically gifted tight ends that were drafted in like the first round. Chigakonkwo wasn't, but they could just have a breakout. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Chigakonkwo has like a top 10 tight end season next year.
Yeah, I think he could be. You might be able to get him in a trade too, like as a throw-in piece, like just to like wait and see, because we know tight ends in general take longer to develop, and like you said, like there's not a whole lot of talent on his team around him because we're kind of assuming, well, what we just said about the number one target on the team and the running back. And he's going to be playing with a young quarterback, most likely, whoever it is, Levis or Willis. So it's like, yeah, I don't mind getting Chigokonkwo. Hope for that. This is kind of what I remember you said a lot last year. You're like, oh, you don't need to like draft tight ends like high. Just like buy them after like a couple of years, and then hopefully they learn something, and then they're good.
Yeah.
So
Chigokonkwo from week 10 on was the tight end 12. From week 12 on, he was the tight end 10. So, I mean, and that's not even really saying much. So,
it's really not because his scores are terrible.
Yeah. And again, just like look at tight end scoring. Yeah, it was a little bit deeper this year, but from again, just look at it from like tight end 8 to tight end 15. There's like maybe a point or a point and a half that separates them. So, but yeah, I think that's it. Titans. I knew this was going to be a longer one just because a lot of people to talk about here. So, any last thoughts on the Titans?
No, I think they're a pretty good team to target. We just kind of went, we just went over all the pieces and stuff, but I think people are pretty down on them in general, given just what we talked about. And I feel like you could almost get anyone on the team for an early second round pick is kind of what we just established, or cheaper, Yeah. So I don't mind that because, let's see what they look like next year. They're a good buy low team, I think, but because you can get them so cheap.
Yeah. Even third round picks for guys like Hopkins or Burks if you want them. So, that's it. We will be back looking at the Falcons, another team with a new head coach, potentially Bill Belichick. As always, like and subscribe, and we will catch you guys next time.